So, thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. We are doing an episode with no guest. That's right. You get both of us in one room. I'm Cali.
I'm Lexi.
And we are the hosts of the show, The Leaderist. And we are just a couple of police broads trying to make it in this great big world.
It's great small police world.
Yeah, as it turns out, it's getting smaller and smaller with the more people we talk to. And I would say that has become even more apparent as we've talked to people in fitness, which has been a theme recently. And is also, Lexi thought it would be a brilliant idea if we kind of talked a little bit about why. Well, I mean, there are obvious reasons we both are into it.
Yeah.
But also, it's kind of been a recent theme for us.
Yeah. So if you've listened to our last 3 podcasts, they've all been around fitness. We're either talking to coaches in the field or people who have dealt directly with compiling data, doing tests with the LEO population. And we've been specifically, I think it's a little bit of a coincidence that we've talked to those people all in a row, but it is something that both of us are very passionate about and we're working on in our own department. So I thought it would be good if we sort of talked about why that is a passion for us, and then also like what it is that we have been doing recently to, increase fitness with officers and what our eventual goals are.
Yeah, it reminds me of when we had our conversation with Freddie Camacho out of NorCal. And we were discussing, I was drawing the parallel between his love for CrossFit, which he's been around since OG times, like way early 2000s. And of course, his wife is a well-known competitor, super hot babe. And, but they're both very in shape, very into that kind of stuff. And, I drew the parallel that like, our love for police work and fitness, or at least his, in my observation, is just like that. It is that ability to be handed anything and sort of try to meet that challenge, and not being able to just game everything or go in with all the knowledge you need to be successful. It's in sport and in, the CrossFit or something like that, you have just a bunch of tasks set before you that oftentimes you don't know what they are. And then, hey, can you rise to the challenge and, achieve something here? So.
Yeah. And I think the parallels also are when you look at something like the CrossFit Games or, or an event that you're a sports event, a game, whatever, that you've prepared quite a bit before that. You've run through scenarios, you've done the lifting, you've done all of the conditioning that you need to do. And then you're presented with that one moment where you have to actually perform. And, I think that the scales are tipped a little bit differently in police work. We have far more volume of performing than we do of preparing.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what Callie and I are trying to do through our work at the department, but also just in general with Ura and with this podcast, is to really drive home that because those scales are tipped, that we're performing far more than we are preparing, that we need to do whatever we can to get a little bit more weight on that preparedness.
Yeah, I think that's the irony when people draw the correlation to sport and to us being, performance athletes or what have you. It's only true up until a degree. And Lexi makes like a great point, is that we're our game day is all the time, and our ability to prepare for that is a fraction of the total picture, whereas it's oftentimes the reverse in most sports. So that is just one way in which it's completely different from sport. But there, there's a lot you can glean from both. And I would say that, when I go talk to people who are getting ready to start the academy, for instance, we talked about this, I use, fitness or strength and conditioning or training in general as just like that vehicle to convey a lot of other lessons through. And, I think sport, that's one way it is similar to sport, is that it does mimic a lot of what you will experience in life. And I tell people in our, pre-academy classes, like, I don't care if your thing is cross stitching or scrapbooking or whatever it is. that if that were to create the environment for you to, kind of mold the skills, or to have the ability to meet a challenge or to build confidence or whatever, it just so happens that strength conditioning and training, it translates to the job a lot more than those things. It's like, but what I'm trying to say is, like, it doesn't have to be your jam. Like, it doesn't have to be your favorite thing, but what you have to do is appreciate its transfer, as long as you're learning, I think those elements of, whatever it is, failure, and then overcoming failure, all of these little lessons that you can learn through training. Maybe you learn those through something else, but I just have found that training is that great tool that also is highly applicable to police work. So
yeah, applicable to the job, but also to the longevity. If surviving the career in a manner that when you do retire, you're functional, you feel good, you don't die within a couple of years after retiring, but you actually are like working towards a purpose in the long run, where you've done this job for however long you've for lack of a better term, served your time and
survived your time.
yeah, and that you are happy, and you have a retirement that's very fulfilling. But so let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if people know they know we're cops, but prior to being law enforcement, we both had kind of similar trajectories that give us some expertise in talking about this particular issue. So I'll turn the interview eye on you. If you what did
Are you talking about when we met at the strip club when we were working there?
You were working, I was
a patron. I don't think that was the case.
But so maybe talk a little bit about what you did prior to coming to law enforcement.
Yeah. So prior to law enforcement, I was in strength and conditioning for a long time, and worked as most people, kind of started personal training and then coaching smaller groups and then working with specific athletes. And that's where things really piqued my interest. And even to go back even further from that, to set a little bit more of a precedence of like how I got into strength and conditioning is, I enjoyed athletics my whole life, but when I was in college, I was also teaching scuba diving, which I don't know if you knew that. Okay. But yeah, I taught diving, and I would do that, like as a part-time job. And I worked in Annapolis, Maryland at the time. And I had an occasion where I was certifying somebody who was in the Army. We had a lot of military going through our program, and even like midshipmen from the academy. And this guy was easily over 220, was a huge dude. And I was doing some deep diving with him, like 100-foot dives at a quarry. And he got very nervous, and he kind of bolted for the surface, and I tried to wrap him up kind of arms and legs like I was taught. And he just easily pulled me along. And, maybe he would have done, a person with a goal to go to the surface, there's, very few things that are going to get in his way. But my takeaway from that was that I felt like I didn't do my job, and I felt unequipped. I felt like I wasn't strong enough to hold him in place. And I thought that was, the reason that he was successful. Luckily, he didn't get injured or didn't have any physiological problems after that, but it was definitely a benchmark moment for me. And I changed my training a lot after that point. So that's when I got a little bit more biased on sport specific type training and strength training and, grip type stuff and just being stronger. So I shifted my training, and then I became, even more obsessed in that rabbit hole. And eventually I took a job with it was then CrossFit Football, which was CrossFit had a ton of specialty seminars, and CrossFit Football was hiring just a couple people. And I went through a rigorous application process of that, which was, interviewing and a bunch of other little things, and a little bit of beer drinking to see if I
ask how much of it was beer drinking
to see if I fit in. And then I moved cross country to join that team, and they eventually evolved into what's currently known as Power Athlete, and worked for them for about, now I'm in year 7 because I'm still working for them, and essentially ended up becoming one of their podcast producers, and I still do that for them. And had the ability to travel the world. I've been to incredible places, Colombia, I've been to Ireland, I've been to Australia, to coach athletes who were training for very specific things like rugby, or well, rugby was a huge thing, but rugby, hockey, football, lots of contact sports. And that just translated so beautifully to the mess that is police work training, because yes, you know, these things that you need to be good at. There's some things that you can kind of pinpoint. Okay, we know, foot pursuit usually lasts about this distance, or maybe a fight lasts this amount of time, but there is no guarantees with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so dependent on geographics, like where do you live, what's your department and lots of other things. And as the policies change, and as the police's role as law enforcement and their relationships with the community evolve, there too also evolves all of the things that are expected of police work, not just in the physical realm, but in the communication realm and lots of other things. And I think we're better for it. So I guess that's the long version of my background with S&C work. So
there you go.
How about you?
Oh, I never thought you'd ask. So I had sort of an interesting, I guess, foray, like what got me there. But I graduated high school. I tried going to college right out of high school. It just didn't work out for me. So I dropped out, and I was kind of floundering. And I ended up getting majorly involved in a martial art that sucked all my time, and I loved it. And I traveled the world with it, just trying to get better. Went down to Brazil, Mexico, I think, and then all over the US. And then it became a big passion of mine. And I ended up in Vancouver, BC, basically running a school with my ex-husband. And I thought about, what could I do that would make me better at this, better at teaching, understanding the movements, and, kinesiology that goes with it. So I ended up going to UBC for human kinetics, and actually getting my Bachelor of Science, which was crazy. I never thought in high school I would actually get like a Bachelor of Science. Science was not my thing, but because it was so interesting. And
knowing you now, that's hard to believe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it kind of is a good lesson, and like never count something out. Totally. Because it, where I love history, I love like writing and all that kind of like liberal arts type of stuff. And always that's what seemed like that was my jam in high school. Mm-hmm. Like this made it so I could make it through college and be interested and really learn kind of a new skill. Mm-hmm. So I took that, my degree, and I did get like my CSCS, and I started personal training, same mm-hmm. thing. And I stayed more in that realm. I ended up becoming a fitness trainer and having trainers work for me, and also training clients. I loved that education portion of it, like teaching people how to be better trainers, which was part of my job. Ended up, I've had a lot of different types of clients, but mainly just doing like one-on-one strength and conditioning. I did some group classes and whatnot, and then always working with people who were, in my martial art, and just making those classes better and make more sense for, transferable skills, mm-hmm. How to train outside of classes. Yeah. And so it was funny because Cali and I had no idea that this was our background, and we both ended up on the same squad from different squads, and we were both attracted to that squad because it was like a lot of senior people that really knew what they're doing. We wanted to learn. So kind of that like same thing we brought to strength and conditioning in our former careers of just wanting to be around people that are better than mm-hmm. us drew us to the same squad. And I just remember being in the locker room one day and saying, I just got this book. It's by this author, Rob Wolf. And Kelly's like, oh, I know him. And I was like, but I know him too. And then we found out how we have the similar background. Yeah. And it was over after that.
Yeah. And it's amazing just how, oftentimes when I think like we're talking about fitness or we're talking about LEO stuff, but I just feel like you and I, when we're thinking about those things, there's something like deeper behind it. It's like, you like the neuroscience aspect, which I'm like huge on as well. And it's like, it's almost like it could be anything. It just happens that we really like law enforcement. Mm-hmm. It's a physical job. It's like exciting and interactive with the community and all that stuff. But it just gets to bring, I guess what I'm trying to say is it brings our aspects of our personality into one thing, Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same with like fitness stuff. Is like, it's just a fascination on like the science and the application of it, and just how when dosed and implemented effectively, it's, you know, it's a magical thing, and that's what we're trying to do with our department.
And with this business is really, and so the focus of the fitness goes to that idea of personal leadership and always being the best you can be, like knowing you're out on the street and if something happened, you'd have the strength to pull your partner to safety, or you'd have the strength to run so that you're there on time to be of assistance. You know, all those things are super important to us, and it's something that, you know, we're trying to instill in other officers we work with, but also, you know, that we're talking to through this podcast.
Yeah. And I don't know how it became, for me, it's like interesting because I don't know how the culture shift happened where it's like, at least from my understanding, is people used to train pretty regularly, and things like fitness incentives and programs around fitness and even kind of intramural cop stuff used to exist. And then we got so far away from it. And it's like, I want to do a case study on that because, you know, I guess intellectually I can understand how things in HR and all these other like guild and union things have kind of stymied the growth or eliminated them altogether. But
or yeah, even litigation, like if
it's just, I mean, it's just a perfect example. I mean, to me, it's like, what a perfect example of just people sucking, like of people just ruining something that was so positive. And, you know, before wellness existed, these softball games, these basketball games existed. They were an opportunity for police officers and even the community to get together and do things that had nothing to do with negative police interaction or anything high stress. And now they don't exist because some assholes in previous years ruined it for everyone. At least that's my vision of how it went down.
Yeah. And I think there's probably some of like the geographical stuff into it too. Like at least in the city, it became more and more expensive to live in the city, and people started spreading out a little bit more. So
Sure.
like actually like getting together in off time could be a little challenging. But and I think that's where, you know, we are today with departments, is that it may not be as easy for your officers to create these spaces on their own outside of work. So how can departments create those spaces on duty, like, or make it really easy and accessible to come to?
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of what we're fighting for, is to have those programs ingrained in your department. It's part of what you do. It's part of what it's not necessarily expected. It's not, you know, because I know there's things that, you know, with policy and union contracts and that kind of thing, like it maybe not obligatory, but, you know, something that's just easy. Like it's there. If an officer says, I want to get in shape, we have a program for you, you know, and we have something you can follow.
One of our, I guess, taglines for the program is eliminating barriers to fitness. Because I feel like everyone has a barrier, be it, you know, they've contrived it on their own, or the department or agency has presented a barrier for them. And so our whole goal is eliminate that. You know, so some of the stuff that we've done so far is when we rolled out our program based off of kind of our Euro model, was essentially we wanted to make sure that we were getting in front of people and showing the value and having people feel the value of learning how their bodies moved, finding out their limitations. So part of that was we were doing movement screenings for them. So anybody who wanted a movement screening, we basically cleared our schedules, and they could, you know, on certain days or times or whatever, and I will come to you. I'll make sure that, you know, the barrier of travel is no longer. So, you know, that's a period. I think that first phase was definitely a period of kind of hustling, where you want to try to you have to trust in the word of mouth aspect. And so going through and doing movement screenings, and then not just providing them with like all of the sciencey brief back that you can provide, you know, here's where your limitations are, here's where, you know, you're having like I'm seeing asymmetries or whatever the case is, but making sure that you go back to how it applies to their life and their goals. So before we do the movement screenings, we like to get to know the people and what their physical goals are. What are the things that they like doing? what are the things that, are goals for them, physically speaking. And then once you do your movement screening, drawing it back to those things, because believe it or not, this might come as a surprise, not everyone's goals come to police work, back to operating optimally on the street. Some people actually, they're like, yeah, I want to do an Ironman. I've been doing triathlons and I want to do an Ironman. Tell me, like, what overuse things you're seeing or imbalances might pose an issue, doing something like that. So,
or even what I do on the job that might be impeding.
exactly. Because, this is one of the few lines of work where, if you have an active life outside of your job can actually fuck up your ability to go do that fun thing. Not everybody's job can injure them to the point where they can't enjoy their leisurely activity, right? So, so that's one of the things that we like to do, I think. Anything else with like the movement screening type stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important part for us when developing this was just the idea that you need to meet people where they're at. And, you can't expect that people are just going to come to you. Obviously, you want to make it available if they do want to come, but you also have to, take those extra steps. Like Callie says, she can go and be where you are. And also the importance of getting people early. I mean, the old adage, you can't really teach an old dog new tricks. You can, but again, they have to want it and they have to seek you out. But with these new people that are just coming in and you're onboarding them, you really have a chance to give them the impression that this is almost like a non-negotiable.
Yes.
And that everybody does it, right? So time for you to do it. I mean, they don't know any better, right? So it's a good time to get them in the headspace of creating a life of fitness, a life of things that will benefit them in the long run, including wellness, including things we've talked about on this podcast, different strategies such as journaling, meditation, etc. Those things are all really important to introduce early on before they get wrapped up in a negative culture that might be out in your department, which we all know exists.
And the mentality that abstaining or ignoring your limitations is not the answer to things. So like kind of thrusting that on people, and Lexi made a good point that I didn't bring up, was I was doing a lot of this with existing officers, but I was also not really giving people who were about to start the academy or just coming out of the academy, not really giving them the option, just kind of saying, this is what we're doing today. I had an opportunity to meet with them, so I was going to take advantage to. And the other reason we choose, the functional movement screen was because I could gather data. And the first thing, when you're put in a position like this is you need to make the biggest bang for your buck. And then you also need to legitimize what the hell you're doing. So in like a big industry like this, isn't my, in my current role, I'm not running a small business necessarily for them. So like I have to make sure that I can show them at the end of the year, hey, this is what we've accomplished.
Yeah, quantifying those. And that's exactly really why we've been talking to who we've been talking to in these last couple episodes, is there's people out there that have done research work and tried to find some quantitative data, which, going back to, we talked to Bo Sandoval, and he is the director of strength and conditioning at the UFC Performance Institute. And we went to a Summer Strong, Soar Next Summer Strong a couple years ago, and he was there speaking, and he had just released his first volume of sort of sports, all the data they had collected through UFC fights, The Ultimate Fighter. And they looked at, they broke it down. I was able to get a copy of it, and they really broke it down very specifically. Like, if you're in this weight class, this gender, your fights, you can expect your fights to last this long. You're going to probably throw this many punches. They end mostly in knockouts, or they mostly go the distance. Like, so he looked at each weight category, gender, and really broke down the data. And that's that kind of sports analysis is really important for building a program that is applicable to the job you do. And there really just isn't a lot of data out there that helps us get to that answer. So a lot of it is just, we're working off of our own experiences or what we've seen. So talking to someone like Jay Dawes and Kornhauser, like, they've actually done that work to try to validate some of this stuff. And, we encourage, if you're listening to this and you know somebody else who has done those types of studies, like even Matt Domiancic way back in the day did heart rate monitor testing. getting those data points to more departments so they can use it in trying to justify having, these programs, I think is really important.
Yep. And I think, definitely I was leaning on a lot of those existing data points to get grants and things like that. And then, but also I just feel like it's our duty to do our part, right? Like, as you're embedded in your agency, you need to be like, it's the onus is on you to collect this data, and it's really, it's going to serve the officers better, right? Like, you want to be able to say to them after a year of implementing the program, publish that for your officers to see, like, hey, we weren't just up here doing chest and buys all week long. We were actually gathering data and like all the stuff that we were doing a little bit of chest and buys, but yeah, so the FMS thing was, I think, a calculated start to it. And then what I found awesome is that it was a great word of mouth tool. A lot of people were hitting us up after that. And I just don't think there's any substitution for in-person stuff.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we were able to do is implement a fitness app from a contest that we won through Effective Fitness. And that they are on the Train Heroic platform, which if you just look up Train Heroic, you can check that out. But great tool, not an in-person experience, right? So there is, I don't think this is going to be novel to anyone whose livelihood depends on like that interpersonal connection type stuff. But it is, there's no, when you're meeting with someone one-on-one and you're able to kind of look into their eyes and convey the importance of certain things or get them moving in front of you, and also just, sort of like highlight your own expertise to a degree so they know that you're just not full of shit. You build trust, credibility there.
Absolutely. And I think there's also like, there's a certain sense of like, cops can be competitive and, I want to see how I measure up to this thing, but it's super low barrier.
Yes.
You don't have to be able to run like a mile and a half to do this. It's a movement screening. So it's something that is not, we had people signing up from chiefs down to new officers because it was something that wasn't really intimidating. It was something that everybody could do. And I think that's important when looking at, the types of program. And something that I think Jay Dawes brought up when we talked to him is that they're really, we might make it a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, that there are, it's a pretty low barrier based on what we do on a daily basis, like sitting in the car, getting out, being able to move, pick things up. But there are those times that it goes from 0 to 1,000 and you're expected to control another person's body. Which if you've never tried to do it, it's so much harder than you think it's going to be.
Even just a limp body.
Yeah. Even the skinniest person you've ever met, like if they are
wiry,
if they're motivated to not be arrested, it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So, we have to look at what we have to do in general on a daily basis, and, that you're healthy and that you're not, killing your hip flexors from sitting all the time or your lower back by the way you wear your gear. But you have to also look at those, like what potentially could be life or death for you or the suspect. And, and then just really stressing the part of the training that addresses that, which I think is important. I got off on a little tangent there, but,
that's all
but going back, cause I think sometimes we start, I remembered why my tangent. I got it. Okay. So I think we sometimes, as like, especially, fitness professionals that want to make this really cool tactical program, we're thinking about that, that 1 in 1,000, that time we have to ramp it up to 1,000, which is important to train for, but you have to remember there's going to be some people that are not anywhere close to that and just need to get that basic healthy fitness, and meeting them there. And then you do the basic stuff and you figure out if they're ready or even interested in doing the more high speed stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. That's something that Jay Dawes definitely mentioned a few times. And I think it's like anything else. Like you need to meet them where they're at. Like you said, make sure that your first interaction with them is not something where you're like, my job is going to be to bury you because I can. Like any personal trainer or coach who's ever done that with a team, it's like you basically are pigeonholing yourself and identifying yourself as that coach from the onset.
Like the coach that's not happy unless their person throws up.
Exactly. It's like, I'm not leaving here until somebody vomits. And like, you find out like really that coach has nowhere else to go, like lives in a studio apartment with like, just
they live above the gym.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, no wonder you're not leaving, because this is what you live for, you asshole. Like, so yeah, so that's part of it. And so meeting them where they're at. But I think that there is and you and I know this just based on our interactions with people, but also providing them like a little dose of something that like makes their ears perk up. It could be a comment, it could be pushing them a little bit, like getting them to learn a new skill is often a great tool, because you're not burying them with intensity. Oftentimes the feeling of intensity just comes from learning a new skill. And so that's something that we have done and had a lot of success with. That's part of, I feel like that's part of a connection building process with someone, is like build some confidence and then teach them something. Teach them something, break down the barrier a little bit, show them like that confidence is a great thing, but it's not, it's that you still have room to grow, in other words. So teach them something, kind of maybe create some humility there. So that's, definitely part of it.
Oh yeah. And I think it's important. This is sort of getting off on very specifics, but when you're meeting with someone for the first time, like it's super important not to just make them feel like a bag of shit. Like, oh, you're just,
that's like, that was your dating life before Jeremiah, right? Like just like
me, or I felt like
you,
shit,
no, you made them feel like shit is more like it. Just shit talking from the get-go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how I got Jeremiah. But I think recognizing where people are skillful at something, even if it's being able to do something very small, but giving them the little attaboys along with, okay, here's what you could work on. But we also have tied it in, going back to other podcasts we've done to wellness and how this physical fitness can contribute to your overall wellness in this career. So I think that's something important too, especially with departments. I feel like right now, a lot of departments, and it might be getting lost a little bit in all the drama of last year, but that employee wellness is super important. So
and again, I kind of go back to like using my role with fitness as that kind of that vehicle or that foot in the door to talk about wellness stuff. And it's kind of reading your crowd and knowing when it's appropriate. But when I start talking about training and then we get talking about wellness practices, kind of weave that in there. I've mentioned it, I think probably on this podcast before, is just, even if you don't think that you need to incorporate these wellness practices, it's incumbent upon you to take a level of responsibility and ownership anyways, because the line of work and the people around you are depending on that. They're depending on like your mental health and you not to lose your shit or to make a poor decision or all of those things,
or just to be a pleasant person to be around every day,
not be a jerk, just even interdepartmentally, like versus even just being in the public and then dealing with the community. But you owe it to them. So even if you're like, look, like, nah, I'm good, my mind's right, whatever, I don't think that's enough. Sometimes you are not enough of a reason. Like sometimes you have to put other people ahead of what you would actually do for yourself, and that's the way I look at it personally.
And for me, I think you can't really argue with data, and there's so many like wearables now and people that are doing research into like people that are high level athletes that just do little changes. And so I'm going to mark today I did mindfulness in the morning, or I did meditation, and how did that affect my sleep at night? How did that affect my resting heart rate, my heart rate variability, all those things that go into how you recover. And you can't argue with the data that people who incorporate wellness and mindfulness practices, along with, good sleep and stuff, have a better readiness, a better ability to get to whatever their task is. And I would argue like police officers, we need to be the most ready. Like we need to be, So if you think of yourself again as like an athlete and getting the body ready for what it needs to do on a daily basis, like paying attention to those things are so important. So messing with your sleep, even if you're on shift work, figuring out a way to get the amount of sleep you need, paying attention to your diet, not just going to 7-Eleven, grabbing a bang and a bag of
Slim Jim.
Doritos.
Slim Jim, come on.
I've been guilty.
Carbs are the enemy.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
I was working with someone the other day that was like, oh man, I've just realized I've had like 8 of these. Slim Jims.
Oh
yeah.
God. So they're tiny. What is that? Like, that's like $4 right there. 8 Slim Jims. Yeah. So, I mean, all these little tools that we're, we have out. I don't want to maybe get too specific to our situation, but let's just say we are leaning on the mechanisms in which most people find information, a la social media, to disseminate a lot of these concepts and the mindfulness practices. And just, I don't even like, mindfulness is just, it is a word that's very in vogue right now, but to me it's just like, yeah, I don't know what a less in vogue word is, but just like, yeah, a mindset. Yeah, it's the same thing. And we talked earlier, like some of the things that I've been doing are trying to, when I drive to work, I have a long commute to work. And so I only pick one leg of the trip to listen to a podcast. And then the other leg of the trip, no sound, nothing. And it's my time to be reflective. And, the last time I did it, I decided to reflect on, just because it was in my mind from the podcast I'd listened to in the morning. On my way home, I focused the whole hour or whatever on what's my purpose and importance, and how do people view that? Like, if I were to ask somebody else of their opinion of what I am doing, what my capacity is in law enforcement, what would their opinion be? And am I living up to that? What is my importance, and how am I showing up for my department and the community every day? So just stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think,
cheesy, but
well, it's great. And I think mindfulness is going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
I know for me, getting my hands dirty, like getting out in my garden and getting time to just even pulling weeds out, which I'm doing quite a bit right now, that those things center me quite a bit. I can let my mind wander. I can think about things. I can listen to podcasts, whatever it might be, to just sort of let my mind kind of just filter back to homeostasis. But again, it's gonna be, and it might be for some people getting in the gym and lifting weights, and we're going for a long run. And there's definitely different mechanisms that your brain will go into, your hormonal system and whatnot, depending on what activity you choose. But just being present and those types of things.
And I want to talk just briefly too about like some of the struggles that we have, like implementing a fitness program or trying to get these wellness practices and things like that become commonplace. And it seems like maybe with exception to you and I, nobody wants to be the first. Nobody wants to be the first person to do X, Y, and Z. So if I'm looking for volunteers for something, or I'm looking for people to participate in something, it's like there's always that maybe handful of people that you can kind of lean on, because they're, for whatever reason, very enthusiastic about life. And so they're like always willing to participate. But the vast majority of people just they're not willing to be the first, or that kind of, I don't know, put their necks out there, you know? So,
well, I mean, so that was the advantage of being a little older when I went through universities, because I didn't really give a fuck anymore if I was the one in the front row raising my hand.
Preach. I know exactly how you feel.
So I would be the one in the class that all the jocks were in the back, because it was, human kinetics. So of course there was like,
they hated you. They're like,
probably like, I'm gonna get out of here, shut up. But I wouldn't have a problem raising my hand and ask those questions, because ultimately I wasn't there for them. I was there for myself.
Yeah.
And I just got into a point where I just didn't care how I looked, and that came with age. So there might be some of that with
totally.
I mean, any group, it's hard to put your neck out there, especially if it might mean, any kind of discipline, or you are afraid of what your peers might say about you. I mean, there is a certain bit of that, because it is such a social job of you
Mhm.
are working with a lot of peers that have very strong opinions
Mhm.
about how you do your work or what you're doing in your work, and you have to be willing to put your neck out there and maybe have some people saying some negative things about you to your face or behind your back or whatever. But
I got an email from someone the other day that was like, "Hey, can you stop sending me these emails?" First of all, I only send out a couple emails a month, maybe, and I was like, "No," I just said, "No, I can't take you off this list. So sorry, you're gonna have to find another way."
did you
Um,
say it's the delete button
yeah,
is
yeah.
right here?
Yeah, like, oh, this is so hard for you. Like, that's exactly why you need our program. God.
That's just somebody going out of their way to tell you
They're
they
having
don't like
they're
what
just
they're
having,
doing.
and I was explaining that to someone else.
Yeah.
They're just having a bad day and they want to try to do the same for me.
Yeah.
And they achieved it. So
Well,
joke's on you, buddy. You hurt my feelings. So no, I mean, it's just, you're always going to have one or two people that are like, oh, that, yeah. Oh, yeah, I heard about your program. Like, whatever, they're kind of talking a little bit of shit. But you know what? Like, I think that I'm focusing on the people that are actually doing it and they love it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's pretty surprising to me, like the people who are pumped about it and are gradually, I don't know, it's becoming a norm for them.
Yeah.
So,
And again, that's the importance of getting people as they come in,
mm-hmm.
is like you can, I mean, I remember when I became a manager of trainers, and I find trainers to be very similar to cops in their mindset, is very type A, kind of feel like they're on an island, like that they're their own, business.
Sure. Yeah.
But
They're autonomous and they're like
yeah,
in their position.
yes, but they
Mm-hmm.
also do work for a
Right.
company,
Mm-hmm.
so um there was a bit of difficulty as a new manager with, I mean, the new people were easy, right? Because you could just instill, they didn't know any better. They knew I was the manager. And
Mm-hmm.
but it was the guys that have been there forever and winning them over into like, all right, I'm your manager now. I know you just met me. You met me as a trainer and now I'm your manager. So like, how can we work this out? I want to hear from you. And getting their buy-in was a lot harder,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And to a certain extent, it was almost like, well, what you're doing is working. Clearly, I'm here for you if you need anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then let me focus on the newbies coming in. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I think, what you got to do in your department. And hopefully, what happens is that those people have been around for a while and are set in their ways. Look at all these people that are doing such a good job with the program you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, the newer ones, and say, okay, maybe something that's going on there is working. So I'm going to reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yes, and one of the other tactics I am trying to employ too is when I think when you, because I would consider this position to be, it's not patrol, it's not operational in like that capacity. And so one of the things that I think is important, a lot of people when they've tried to roll out not fitness programs but maybe other programs similar, they have a difficulty relating to patrol or operational units and things like that. And part of what I'm doing is just I still try to do operations as often as I can, because when there's an opportunity, because I still enjoy it, but also it's important. I mean, it's important work, and it's important too to people, to for me to say, hey, here's this program we're putting out there, and I'm not just doing it from some like island. I'm still an officer. I still am going on the street. I'm still seeing what everybody else is dealing with on a daily basis and how applicable this content is. So I think that that's part of it too. Is I don't know if many people realize what a uh, I don't know, this weird dynamic that exists between maybe civilian clothed officers and uniformed officers. Because it definitely, if you switch jobs or something like that, there's definitely like a little bit of a different vibe.
Well, that ties in the leadership aspect of what
Mm-hmm.
we're doing, is that there's a definite way to lead. You see the people in command that officers, like line officers, really respect, and it's those people that are kind of willing to get out there with them and see what they're doing, and lend a helping hand if it's at all possible. And those are things that I think gain a lot of respect. And so you doing that, I think, helps people see like that's a leadership aspect, right? And that's something that's really important to implementing any program. um, And if you're listening to this and you're in a department and you really want to get a program going, uh, we had someone give us some good advice, one of our sergeants, that you're going to have like 10% of people that really believe in your idea, 10% of people that really hate your idea, and the rest are fence sitters. And you have to really just
they're kind of in that inaction state,
Well, they're waiting to see where the scales go. Like,
right.
is it
Where's the majority
Yeah.
gonna lean to? And then I will join that. Yeah.
So you have to go after those fence sitters.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where you just have people that are just kind of like, they're not like going to be proactively be champions for your cause. And so, you have to convert them somehow. And I think the best way to do that is to Jedi mind trick them into coming to do a group workout with you or do something physical. I don't think there's, like I said, that in-person contact, there is no substitution for that, especially if you have the right people there to create the environment to where it's like they can't get enough of it, right? Doesn't matter where your fitness level is at. If you can create that environment where they feel challenged, they learned something, and then at the end of the day, they felt that sense of camaraderie, that's all you need. And that person will be back and they'll probably bring somebody else with them. And so that's, to me, that's the magic kind of combination. And when you're first just getting your feet wet, like we have to remember that it's in the beginning stages. And so all it does is take time and hard work in the right direction.
And that kind of goes back to the culture thing. And if you look back at, like, I think CrossFit, what it did very well is be able, like, in every gym you go into, every gym would have like kind of a culture, right? And there's a huge social aspect to it where people would come and, like, they like to hang out with their friends. I got that out of the martial art I did. I mean, it was a big part of it was the physical stuff, but like the social aspect of it was huge, right? So how do you integrate that into the things that you do in your departments? It's not just let me provide this workout for you to do on your own in the department gym. As Callie was saying, it's that in-person connection. It's getting groups of people together. It's creating opportunities for people to just relax and not have to worry about all
and heal too. A lot of people are healing from a lot of stuff that they're dealing with from the job or their personal life. And why does it make sense to train with these people you work with? Well, a lot of reasons, but part of it too is they end up being your closest friends too. So they'd be the people you'd naturally want to go get a beer with or do anything with anyways. So, you substitute, training or fitness in for that. And, hopefully that becomes the mechanism through like the healing and the, just the de-stressing and coping and that kind of thing. So, that's the goal. That's what we're trying to accomplish. There's we're doing a ton of data collection. Again, we're like leaning heavily onto that because I think that that's the key to legitimizing your program.
So I'd say if you're listening to this and you either are trying to get something like this started at your department and you have questions for us, just contact us. Our email's on our website, which is www.iurallc.com. We're happy to help you out. We've got lots of programs going. Or if you're someone who's listening to this and has run across data that would be helpful to what we're doing, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you know somebody that might know this kind of stuff, we'd love to hear from them. We're just trying to compile as big of a resource pool as we can. Would you anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so. Just I mean, we're always trying to learn something. So if you have something that you think would be of interest to us or would be a good resource, like Lexi said, just feel free. I think that's it though.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, bye.
Bye.